What's up, guys? So today's question comes from Brad K on YouTube, and his question is about scouting out your opponents for a competition coming up. And so he's wondering, do I scout my opponents out more for a tournament, or do I just focus on my own game plan going out there? And does this change at black belt versus, say, purple belt, blue belt, and so on? So Brad, thanks for the question, brother. And guys, you might know that notice the scenery is a little bit different than normal, and that's because I'm here on our weight training side. I didn't feel like, I'm getting a late night lift in, and I didn't feel like moving the camera over to the other side, so we're working here today. So Brad, thanks for the question. I'm gonna answer your second question first, which is, does it change? I mean, the biggest difference from, say, scouting out an opponent at a lower level versus a higher level of jiu-jitsu is simply the abundance of video, right? There's gonna be more video typically, not always, on black belts and brown belts, right? Just because there's more eyeballs on them, so that's typically gonna be a little bit easier to come by. In my experience back in the days of white belt and blue belt, there simply was no YouTube, and so that wasn't an option. And as a purple belt and brown belt, YouTube was still pretty young. And it wasn't until I was a black belt that I really had a chance to dig into videos of people that I was competing against. And that kind of leads me to the first question that you asked, like, do I scout my opponents out or do I focus on my own game plan? I tend to focus on my own game plan more than I scout out other people, and there's a reason for it. When I was a new black belt, I got in my own head a lot, right? And my very first black belt match was a last minute sort of thing, because what happened was I was actually having a beer with my friend. We're sitting here having his, at his birthday party, having a beer, chilling out, relaxing, and I get a call from a friend who runs a organization that does competitions. And he was doing a super fight series for black belts, and he said, hey man, one of the guys backed out. I don't know if you're free tomorrow, but would you be interested in competing? So I was like, chug the beer down? Sure thing, I'll be there. So I left the party at a reasonable time, got home, and when I got home, I instantly started looking this guy up, this guy that I was gonna have to compete against the next day. And when I'm looking him up, I noticed that he had this one sweep from full guard that was pretty good, and he hit it on everybody in these matches. And so my mind instantly was like, okay, I'm watching his setups, I'm watching all the little things that I can pick apart from that sweep. And my biggest focus on that match going in there was don't get hit by that sweep. Guess what happened when I went to that match? I got hit by that damn sweep. And so this happened more than once where I would scout my opponents out and I would get so in my own head. And there was a reason for that, because in my area in Louisville, there were no competitive black belts to my knowledge at that time, right? There were black belts in jiu-jitsu, but there were none competing, especially none competing regularly. I don't know of any of them that were competing at all. And so I was doing something that's new to the area, right? I was kind of trailblazing a little bit, and there was no one doing it. And so for me, like going out there was definitely a bit of, nervousness at first, because I'm doing something that nobody in the area is doing, and so I don't really have anything to go back on. I'm out there by myself. And so there was some nervousness associated with that, and when I would watch these matches, I would get in my own damn head every time. And so I stopped, because I noticed that every time I would pay attention to these people, I would have trouble. Now, here's where we spin around. I went up against a few guys where I didn't have a whole lot of information on them, right? Or I would go to tournaments and I didn't have the luxury of being able to say, let me scout my opponents out, and I was thrown into the mix. And in those matches where I didn't really have any time to prepare for it, I performed incredibly well, right? And I didn't have as much problems because the only thing I could focus on was what I was gonna do. And so being able to contrast these two and seeing kind of the results, I kind of realized when I was journaling one day that one of my biggest problems was scouting out people and getting too much into their game plan instead of my own. So now, I don't scout people out. I'll watch their matches, kind of get an idea of what I'm getting into, but I don't really pick them apart too much. I'll look at them, kind of get a general idea of what they're doing, and then I focus on my own game plan. And for me, everyone's different, by the way. Some people need to scout their guys out, that's cool. But for me, my biggest focus is go in and do what I'm supposed to do, right? Because to me, competitions, it's always about the conquering of self. And for me, that's what I'm out there to do. I'm out there to conquer myself, and I'm out there to just unload my game plan to the best of its abilities. I'm not out there typically, and if I compete, to squeak by on a decision win. I'm out there to try to submit the person. And so if I'm going to submit someone, I have to be able to execute with just ruthless execution. I have to be able to throw those techniques out there without even hesitating for a moment. And if I do, then it's not gonna work, especially not at the black belt level. So that's my personal way of going about it. I don't scout guys out too much anymore. I'll glance at them a little bit, but my biggest focus is on my own game plan. And I can tell you from guys in the gym here, when we do this, when we focus on our game plans instead of focusing on someone else's, it comes out much better for us in the tournaments. And so, Brad, I hope that helps you, brother. Thank you so much for the question. And guys, I'll talk to you soon.